2024 budget that we expect any moment from 2:30. Professor Njuguna Ndungu will be presenting the budget statement at Parliament buildings. And before we cross over to the Treasury, let's first of all have this story on the budget, but in Kiambu County, where the Kiambu County Assembly approved a budget of 21 billion for the financial year 2023-2024. The county targets to collect 8 billion from own source revenue and 13 billion shillings equitable share disbursed from the National Treasury. Health Department took the lion's share with allocation of about 7.69 billion shillings, then followed by roads and transport docket at 2.5 billion shillings. With its passing, the budget also elicited mixed reactions from the members after surpassing the previous financial year. It is estimated as the largest own source revenue target for a county that has been grappling with underperformance in local revenue mobilization since the advent of devolution.
I want to thank the executive for being ambitious, but at the same time, we also need to see the manner in which we are going to raise our revenue.
In terms of health, in health committee, it's a recommendable job. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support.
So that, Honorable Speaker, nothing gets out from the windows and the cracks in the granary, so that we may be able to achieve this document of 21 billion.
So it is our belief as a committee, Mr. Speaker, that the executive will work around the clock to ensure that even the projects that were given by members, which is quite important and fundamental because we are the representatives of the people.
Elsewhere, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki is this hour holding a closed-door security baraza meeting in Lamu on long-standing historical injustices, the conflict between herders and farmers in the region. The CS is also engaging the county security team in the fight against terrorism. Lamu County borders Somalia along the Kiunga-Ras Kamboni border, an area that has witnessed insecurity incidents in the recent past. And still at the coast, Kilifi Governor Gideon Mungaro has called for immediate arrest of goons who evicted over 200 families living in the 1,015-acre land at Majengo village in Kinango, Magarini sub-county over a land dispute. Mungaro has also called for the immediate transfer of all security officers in the sub-county. A tycoon who claimed to own the land invaded the village with goons who burnt down houses before terrorizing them. Meanwhile, Mungaro sacked the entire Kilifi County Public Service Board a day after they were impeached by members of the Kilifi County Assembly. The MCAs had unanimously sent members of the Kilifi County Public Service Board packing over allegations of gross misconduct, violation of the Constitution, and incompetence.
Tulienda tukaandikisha statement obi, hata wengine P3 tuko nazo. Siku ya kwanza ya pili DCI akaingia maeneo haya akiwa na askari kutoka Hadu na akatoa warning kwamba watu wahame eneo hili kwa sababu amepata ushahidi kwamba hili eneo hatufai kukaa mbali ni ya yule mwekezaji Bwana Salat. Siku ya pili yake ndio sasa uovu ambao mmeona hapa ukaanza kutendeka. Watu kuvunjiwa ikiwa DCI mwenyewe anasimamia.
Hii hali ya mashamba ilianza tangu mwaka wa 2013 ndo mabwenyenye wanapatiwa mashamba sasa. Maana msioni hayo mabwenyenye yameanza barabarani mpaka yamefika huku tumefika. Hii ardhi yote ya Magarini wazee wamemaliza na mabwenyenye.
Hii mahali hakukuwa na court order. Polisi waliendaje mahali hakuna order ya court? Nani aliwapa ruhusa? Nataka tujue. Na haitafanyika nikiwa governor wa county. Hata kama kuna court order, kama sitaambiwa Mtu akivunja hapa tutapambana na yeye.
I have this morning taken the decision to relieve the following commissioners of their mandate with immediate effect. Ms. Rose Juma Ngoa, Chairperson, Kilifi County Public Service Board. Raymond Muramba Mweni, Member. Alphonse B. Murima, Member. Ms. Patience Mwangiri, Member. In the interim, the Secretariat at the Public Service Board, the Secretariat at the Board will continue to carry out tasks that do not require approval of the Board.
In other news, Kenyans have been urged to use antibiotics appropriately in a bid to reduce antimicrobial resistance in the country. According to the Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee chairperson at the Kenyatta National Hospital, Dr. Lois Ombajo, the global crisis threatens to reverse the progress the country has made in the field of medicine. Pauline Nasimiu with the details.
Antimicrobial resistance has emerged as one of the greatest challenges to modern medicine.
Antimicrobial resistance, and what that means is that bacteria no longer respond to the commonly used antibiotics.
According to Dr. Lois Ombajo, the chair of the Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee at the Kenyatta National Hospital, said this global crisis threatens to reverse the progress the country has made in the field of medicine.
So as a country, we may not be in a very good place. It's only that AMR has not received a lot of attention. This bacteria is probably about maybe more than 50% resistant to some of the commonest antibiotics that we use, like ceftriaxone. And the main thing that's driving this resistance is the amount of antibiotics we use.
The threat, according to the health experts, has increased over the years, leading to a rise in the mortality rate.
Antimicrobial resistance is increasing to a level where it's actually becoming a pandemic because of the number of people who die from antimicrobial resistance. There's a recent study that estimated that the mortality associated with antimicrobial resistance just in 1 year, 2019, was about 5 million people. Imagine that's higher even than the mortality that was caused by COVID in 1 year.
The mortality rate has led the experts to come up with two types of guidelines, namely surgical prophylaxis and empirical antimicrobial therapy guidelines.
So it gives guidance on which types of antibiotics and when to use them for different types of surgery. So that's the first guideline we've launched today. The second one is about antibiotic use for different infections. So as I said earlier, if someone comes with pneumonia, what antibiotic do you use? If someone comes with a urine infection or a skin infection, what antibiotics do you use? So those are the two guidelines that we have launched today.
The country has been urged to move away from the habits that drive inappropriate use of antibiotics, such as prescribing antibiotics for self-limiting viral infections. This is as Kenyatta National Hospital, in collaboration with the University of Nairobi's Department of Faculty of Health Science, launched antibiotic use guidelines that will reduce the increase of antimicrobial resistance in patients.
Misuse and overuse of antimicrobial are the main drivers in the development of drug-resistant pathogens. Applying these antibiotic use guidelines will go a long way to stop the resistance. Pauline Nasimiu for Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
Moving on, the Methodist Church in Kenya Executive Council has announced that a new leadership will be elected in place in July this year. The move has been reinforced by the court's decision to declare that the immediate former presiding bishop term of office ended in August of 2020. ACK acting presiding bishop Reverend Isaiah Day assured church members that the church was in the process of amicably resolving all issues experienced in the recent past. The election was to be conducted in August of last year.
Last year, in August 2022, the church was treated to an abnormality and was not able to elect a new leader. But this year, 2023, in July, a new leader will be chosen by the annual conference meeting. Kwa tunataka kuyafanya na tunashukuru kwa sababu hatukufanya makosa, kwa sababu yale ambako tulikuwa tunataka yafanywe ni yale ambayo pia koti imeweza kutuunga mkono ya kwamba tuendelee, ya kwamba sheria zetu tumezifuata. Wale watakaokuja watakuja na wataambiwa ya kwamba ni sheria. Wakati ukifika, hata mimi wakati ukifika ni kuenda, hakuna mambo ya kuanza. Tutahakikisha kwamba hayakufanyika tena.
Now, National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF, has embarked on a community engagement open days to strengthen its commitment to the community's access to healthcare. Speaking during NHIF Open Day at Kagio Town in Kirinyaga Central Region, Manager Winnie Mbogwa said the community outreach program aims to close the gap of about the unregistered population in the Central Region, which stands at 50%. She said another 10% of registered group has dropped out of the cover by not paying the monthly fee. During the medical camp, individuals from the immediate community received essential screenings and tests, and even some underwent minor treatments, all free of charge.
About 50% of the population are registered with NHIF. So we are out to reach out to the 50% who are registered. We are also out to reach to about 10% who registered but they dropped out, meaning they stopped paying. They are not aware that they can still continue to be members of NHIF. They can be paying monthly as self-employed, and they continue with the membership.
So we have, like yesterday was 150. Today, as we are proceeding to the noon, we have like 100. The turnout is actually positive for biometric registrations.
We can say the response is very okay. People have come in numbers. We have different hospitals which are represented there, and we can see the flow of the patient is okay.
And in other news, Kilifi County Assembly has adjourned indefinitely to protest the decision by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to reduce their wages of the members of county assemblies. Deputy Majority Leader Martha Koki moved a motion to adjourn all plenary sitting until the commission recedes its decision and reinstate their allowances. This comes after their packs were reduced from 144,000 to 86,000 shillings per month. Ganze Ward MCA Karisa Ngirani decried it was discriminatory for the SRC to remove the sitting allowances of MCAs while retaining those of members of the National Assembly. The Communications Authority of Kenya, CAK, is developing a framework for introduction of digital sound broadcasting in Kenya to ensure efficient utilization of the scarce broadcasting spectrum. Communication Authority Director General Ezra Chiloba says the move is geared towards satisfying the growing demand for radio broadcasting services that have outstripped the existing FM radio frequencies.
As you know, the trend of technology keeps changing every day, and what that means is that we have to keep up with the game in terms of regulation, development, as well as management of content in the market.
This initiative is intended to ensure efficient utilization of the scarce broadcasting spectrum and satisfy the growing demand for radio broadcasting services. We have reached out for your comments and are projecting to have this operationalized within the next 3 years. Allow me to reiterate that the authority is making all efforts and we remain at your disposal to support all players in this subsector to enable your business to grow, or businesses to grow.
Now, the government is seeking partners to drive innovation in the energy sector amid a push for sustainable energy solutions. Energy and Petroleum Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir says Kenya is keen on fostering partnerships during the Africa Energy Forum set to be held at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC, slated for next week.
Kenya has made significant progress in diversifying the energy mix, with geothermal, hydro, wind and solar power accounting for 81% of electricity generation. The utilization of geothermal, which constitutes over half of the low-carbon electricity, has positioned Kenya as a front-runner in the field. However, the government is seeking to advance sustainable energy solutions through partnerships geared towards driving up innovation. Chirchir says the government is set to sign various frameworks with different countries in Africa to accelerate solar and wind energy projects.
In the energy sector, to go to the LPG transition fuel in all our homes, who are currently at 70% biomass, and we want to put LPG in all our homes in the next 3 to 4 years.
The Africa Energy Forum is expected to be a catalyst for advancing sustainable energy solutions, fostering partnerships and shaping the future of Africa's energy landscape.
What's important is to celebrate the fact that we are having this forum for the first time in Africa, having done across the globe for 24 years, and Kenya was privileged to host the first time.
Frederick Mwoki for Lunchtime News.
Hundreds of global manufacturers, finance specialists and software industry experts are in Nairobi for a 2-day forum to deliberate on strategies inhibiting trade, commodity and infrastructure financing markets. Newgen Software Sales International Vice President Vivek Bhatnagar says the forum will offer attendees a platform to gain insights into the changing dynamics in African trade. The Newgen team is showcasing supply chain finance solutions for automation of complex trade processes. Traders at Oyani Market in Migori County are now lamenting the poor state of market, which they claim has been a problem for more than a decade. The residents accuse the county government of not honoring its obligations and leaving the market in danger of being swept by floods during rainy season. They also claim lack of washrooms and security lights was also a challenge in the market. The area member of the county assembly, Norman Ogola, also urged responsible county departments to take action on the matter. Moving on, the government is reviewing the visa regimes with other like-minded countries to ease movement of people, goods and services. Transport Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen says the government has been pursuing bilateral air service agreements with 8 other countries to enhance connectivity and boost trade with new markets.
The main objective of the policy is to foster the growth of the aviation business in Kenya, create an enabling environment for job creation in the sector, position Kenya as a recognized regional leader in aviation, maximize the sector's contributions to Kenya's economy, and enhance Kenya's connectivity at a national and international level. This policy will ensure airlines have the freedom to take advantage of market opportunities, particularly within the African Continental Free Trade Area, as in line with Vision 2030.
Makueni Fruit Processors Cooperative and the Center for Agriculture and Biosciences International has commissioned 31 extension officers to help farmers produce quality fruits. The Center for Agriculture and Bioscience International plans to hold regular meetings with extension officers to review the recommendations they have from various farmers.
As I already mentioned previously, most of these youth are Form 4 level. So we've been able to give them some knowledge on plant health issues and how to diagnose the plant health issues, and also how to give good recommendations once they are able to diagnose what is wrong with the plants in the farm. Then we also gave them some training on spray service provision, and that included how to identify the best plant protection products to use on the crops after recommendation, and how they are going to also protect themselves as they are going to be using the plant protection products.
We have a need in terms of the county. We should have one per ward. And overall, we also should be having some within the sub-county to support the ones in the wards, and then at the headquarters. But at the moment, we've done an analysis and realized most of these staff have retired. Others have resigned maybe because of other needs, and we have identified a big staff gap. And we actually, as a department, we're also in the process of trying to see if we can recruit more, because it's a need. There's a cry that there are less extension officers in their field. And with this, we are saying we are grateful for the private partners who are coming in to support us.
Further afield, more than 100 people in southwestern Nigeria have drowned, and more are missing after a boat carrying them down the river Niger capsized. The vessel was carrying around 300 passengers traveling from Kwara State to Niger State after a wedding ceremony. This and more in our international news wrap.
The vessel carrying around 300 passengers claimed 106 lives, including children and adults, with around 144 being rescued from the tragedy. The boat capsized after part of the vessel collapsed, causing water to flood the boat. Meanwhile, more than 150,000 people in India and Pakistan have been evacuated from the path of a fierce cyclone before its expected landfall. This is following Pakistan's disaster management agency warning of storm surges as high as 3 to 4 meters along the coastline. Finally, in southern Greece, at least 78 people have lost their lives and more than 100 have been rescued after their fishing boat sank, despite no one on board wearing a life jacket. Brian Onsom, reporting for Lunchtime News.
Time to play now. Croatia beat the Netherlands 4-2 in an entertaining UEFA Nations League semi-final clash played in Rotterdam last night. Croatia will face either Italy or Spain in the final, this being the second major international final that they will feature in 5 years.
Croatia are one win from their first major title after beating the host Netherlands in a dramatic UEFA Nations League semi-final. Daniel Malane opened the score for the hosts in the 34th minute. Only for Andrej Kramaric to equalize for the 2018 World Cup finalists from the penalty spot 10 minutes after the break. Croatia went ahead in the match in the 72nd minute when Mario Pasalic slotted home from the close range.
Fired in, and it's a brilliantly taken goal. And Croatia have turned it around with Pasalic.
But the hearts were broken by Noah Lang, who equalized for the Dutch in the last minutes of added time to force the game into extra time. Bruno Petkovic came off the bench to give Croatia the lead through a thumping effort in the 98th minute.
De Jong turned. Oh, what a strike that is! Magnificent from distance.
Captain Luka Modric signed off Croatia's win with a penalty in the 116th minute.
Just lunges at it. Cement their place in the final. You bet he can.
To book them a place in the Nations League final, where they will face either Italy or Spain. Italy and Spain square off in the other semi-finals match tonight in Netherlands.
And on that note, we are taking our second breather right here on KBC Lunchtime News on this special budget reading day. We'll be right back.
Welcome to East Africa. This is Safari Rally Kenya.
The WRC Safari Rally is set for June 22nd to June 25th in Naivasha. This year's event, the 7th leg of the WRC calendar, consisting of 19 stages, will see drivers, among them defending champion and series leader Khalid Vampera, battle in what's considered as the toughest rally in the world. KBC Channel 1 will bring you the action to your living room, where a total of only 5 stages will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 and the Shakedown exclusive on our Facebook page. Catch the WRC Safari Rally on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Settle down everyone. My name is Mr. Sanjay and I'm your new business teacher.
And what do we say? Charity begins at home.
In Kinyanjui's case, it is robbery, not charity.
Continue suggesting. Me Julia Molo, I am not contributing anything. Contribution yangu atoe kwa deni.
Ashidang, my teacher is divorced. Ashidang, my teacher is bounced.
Utamu wa relationship is when I, the man, provide and protect.
Never and never again unless I'm richer than the man.
But a stay-at-home mom with maids. Ndio nikisikia kwenda kudunda, woo, I just bounce.
Achana na pili kabisa. Hata kataka mimo. No means no. Anytime anatashikwa.
Mbona kwa? Babangu hata sijui yuko wapi na wala hata sijali.
Kumbe hajulikani alipo.
Kwa hivyo mimi mfanye nini? Unajua tumetamani sana kuona wakiwa na furaha vile. Lakini mimi kwa ghafla sana.
Wewe neno la ghafla umelijua leo kwani? Tia mambo yote bro. Hapo umetupambao. Una mengi ya kusema? Hapo umaliza.
Naweza taka nini aso?
Tutajuaje?
Yaani hata uwezi jiambia kuwa waweza tafuta kijimtu. Watu wengi hawana kazi huko nje. Waweza tafuta kijimtu kikafanya hii kazi tukamlipa.
Nashuku mume wangu amekufa.
Amefanya nini?
Amemuua.
Pato. Umeelewa tu, you are drunk as usual. Nini kimewaleta kwa nyumba yangu?
Tumeambiwa kwamba kuna mtu ameuawa hapa. Yuko wapi? Na hii si ni nyumba ya mzee Mapapa.
Wewe ulisema hiyo dawa niweke kwa chakula sio kwa juice. Na mimi hiyo shughuli ilikuwa nianzie leo.
Sawa, kama sio basi ni nani?
This won't work. This is complete garbage. This guy thinks I'm stupid, like I'm not thinking. Who? Hector Alhure. He was supposed to give me a full report on Melena's past, but all this says is that this woman is a living saint, can't even kill a fly. Oh, please. I have to take the risk. I'm not running. If I do, I will lose everything. I'm not letting my great life go without a fight.
You lost your mind? How could you spend the night with your father's worst enemy?
Las Bandidas. Subhanallah walhamdulillah La ilaha illallah wallahu akbar.
Mwenyezi Mungu anasema wala in kafartum, ikiwa mtakufuru neema za Allah, inna adhabi la shadid, hakika adhabu yangu ni nzito, hakuna mtu atakayeweza kuihimili adhabu ya Allah tabaraka wa taala. Aqulu ma tasmaun.
Ikafikia kiwango ambacho na Aisha radhiallahu anha aliweza kumuuliza, hivi mbona wazidisha ibada kwa wingi sana wakati Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amekujalia neema? Basi Mtume Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam alijibu kwa kuuliza, Je, sipaswi kuwa mja mwenye kumshukuru Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ambaye ni Mola wangu?
Welcome back to 2023 budget, and we are expecting the CS any moment from 2:30 to exactly 2 p.m. So we are expecting him in the next about 30 minutes. He will be heading to Parliament. As you can see, those are live pictures coming to you live from Treasury Building. Everything is set. The red carpet is also ready for the CS. We are expecting him actually to first of all have some photos outside the National Treasury with the famous budget briefcase. After that, he will be heading to Parliament, where both houses will be waiting for him, and over 50 million Kenyans are high in expectations. Let's first of all crunch the numbers, and I will introduce my guest this afternoon, Robert Maina. Robert Maina is a tax manager at Ernst & Young. And before Maina, we crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
You were here when I was reading the news, and you had some of the expectations of Kenyans.
Yeah.
They are not quite expectant. This is the biggest budget in Kenya's history.
Yeah. And thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
I mean, interesting, this year has been, I think, the best year when we've had the greatest level of public participation. So granted, every member of the public is well aware of the main issues that the budget is likely to address. I know we have the main issues to do with the housing levy or tax, depending on how you call it. We have the proposed VAT on fuel. So there are a couple of issues that have been proposed in the bill, and they've been canvassed a lot through the relevant committee, where that every common Mwananchi is aware of these main issues that are being proposed. So that could be the reason why, based on the fact that we've seen that the bill was actually approved. So the expectation is that these issues will be there, and they are likely to probably raise the cost of living to some extent. So that could be the reason why I guess the negative statements are there across board there.
You've mentioned public participation, and you said it has been quite robust in regards to this budget.
Yeah.
But looking at the amendments that the budget committee made in Naivasha, it did quite factor in a lot of what Kenyans were saying.
Yeah, I know, and like we've had the cabinet secretary who will be presenting the budget in a few state that they are operating in an environment where they have to make a lot of compromises to some extent. So depending on who you ask, I think when you ask some members of parliament, they will tell you the government has given in on certain things. For instance, reduce the proposed rate on the housing levy to 1.5% from 3%, while some people did not want to have it at all. So someone will tell you we had to compromise because they still have an agenda. They promised the common Mwananchi that housing will be one of the key pillars of this government. Now you look at the other, major issue would be the VAT on fuel, which I think is also affecting every other Kenyan. And the government indicates that in the absence of this, having the rate introduced back to the normal 16%, then they will certainly not be able to get enough revenue to finance the various very current development projects that they have. So it's a very difficult conversation, and I know the government has been trying to balance, but obviously we know Kenyans are feeling the heat. The cost of living is high, and the government will have at least to ensure that they shield the very vulnerable citizens from the high cost of living in one way or the other as they try to raise the revenue from the rest of the Kenyans.
We've talked about a balancing act. It's a very delicate balancing act that the CS has to do today. How does he balance the expectations of Kenya vis-a-vis the current economic turmoil that we are in, and not only that, the global recession?
A very tough one. You look at the current government, when they came into power, or the major, in their manifesto, the main aim is to lift the common Mwananchi. And they have the key thematic areas they indicated they would use to lift up the common citizen. When you look at that one, for you to finance major projects or for you to lift up the common monarchy, you need revenue. There's no doubt about that. There's no other way you can get revenue other than you have to get some tax at least. If not that, then you have to borrow. Obviously, there has been acceptance that we've borrowed quite heavily in the recent past. So the government has been indicating that we either go to the market and borrow more, or we have to raise some more revenue, either by taxing people more or trying to get tax from areas that they were not collecting. You know, a very tough choices. So the government has at least to ensure that if we have to collect taxes, at least the common monarchy, we have things to do with the, support programs. You could have certain things that are subsidized on a case-by-case basis, very well targeted, because I know the government is not very, the current government is very clear. They are not intending to have subsidies, but I guess they can have some one way or the other of cautioning the very elderly and the very needy people to ensure that they are not affected by the increase in the taxes. Yeah.
And when the Kenya Kwanza government came into power, and even before then, during the campaigns, they were talking about lowering the cost of living.
Yes.
And in some of the proposals in the finance bill, they talked about they have zero-rated agriculture inputs. They have also zero-rated things like gas.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there is a 16% VAT on fuel products.
Yes.
More or less, it's like government giving with one hand and taking with the other. Being a taxman, how is this likely to impact Kenyans and especially this budget?
The budget. Now, if you look at the history of taxation of petroleum products, when we had a whole overhaul of the VAT Act in 2013, and that brought with it a first period within which VAT was set to be introduced on petroleum products. Then came in after the end of that period when we were supposed to introduce VAT. There was a lot of public outcry that the cost is very high, and part of it is obviously the international prices. We import 100% of our petroleum products are imported. So the rise in the price outside there then affects what we pay in the country. And a few years ago, the same attempt to introduce VAT, there's a bit of public outcry, and the government came in with a balancing act of why don't we go with 8%, which is half of what is recommended. At the moment, we had a pressure, obviously, from the likes of World Bank, IMF, and all that, to ensure we collect as much as we can. And probably the government, I want to imagine, probably the government has committed. They have to demonstrate that they are able to collect more, because we have upcoming debt redemptions. And that's why, while they know very well this will affect every Kenyan, it's probably the only way of collecting substantial tax revenue. There's no doubt. Out of they expect about 211 billion. Most of the tax revenue, if this goes through, will be from that VAT on the additional 8%. So that could be the reason why the government is very adamant on maintaining that, because that's the only avenue where they have any substantial tax corrections.
And still on the VAT on fuel, is it likely to push inflation a little bit more higher?
Most definitely, there's no doubt about that, because we all know, goods and services, we have most of our goods are manufactured using fuel or any other source of power, but there's fuel behind it. We have our Kenya Power. Every time when you have a bill, you have some fuel adjustment somewhere, because if the cost goes up, they have to push that to you. So we expect that cost of goods will have to go up, any manufactured goods. If we are saying unprocessed goods, which have to be transported from one area to the other, if I'm a transporter, I'll certainly not bear that cost over the additional VAT. So we have to see, there's certainly going to be some inflationary pressures. The only way we can get out of this, to some extent, is if we're able to, let's say, for agricultural products, we're hoping we have a bumper harvest this year. Otherwise, if we don't have a harvest this year, then the cost of unga, which is a common staple food in Kenya, will probably go up further, and which is I think what is making most Kenyans very angry at the moment. So then the government has to ensure that if they collect these taxes, then they have to work and ensure that at least the basic commodities are not affected through either giving cash relief or subsidies, or one way or the other giving the very vulnerable people some cash disbursement, such as the elderly. Otherwise, it might become out of relief for very many Kenyans who are not earning a lot of money in Kenya.
It's a good thing you've mentioned some tax reliefs on some people so that we may try to balance.
Yeah.
How is that likely to affect the economy if we do that?
Now, the taxes we have, you see, and this is how the previous government came in. You remember when the previous government was getting out, they were giving a lot of relief on unga. And I think they had said a lot of money, a lot of debt had accumulated from both the unga and the petroleum products. And they said this is not sustainable. I think we are doing about 40 billion per month. Obviously, the government said this is not sustainable. In some cases, it was not evident that some of these benefits were actually flowing to the common mwananchi, because even if you went to the supermarket, it was almost impossible to get the subsidized unga. So unless you say, if they have to give some targeted, reliefs or those kind of programs, let's say, for instance, the cash transfer program, those are very well organized programs, because if the money is meant to come to me, it can only come to me unless someone is doing some other things, because in that case you're able to get the right people. Otherwise, when you give a general subsidy and we are working in a situation where we have very limited tax corrections, then it is either we give the subsidies and then we postpone very many development projects, because it's a give and take. You either borrow as much, and you see the board that was issued yesterday or the day before. We are rating the government at almost 16%.
Yes.
You can imagine that. If we borrow that for 2-3 years that late, I mean, in a few years' time, the cost of servicing the debt will be extremely high. So we have to, one or the other has to give. If we give subsidies, then we have to balance by postponing some of the development projects that might be in the pipeline.
All right, something Kenyans have enjoyed for a couple of months, just in a run-up to the election, were the subsidies. And yes, indeed, the World Bank and IMF have said the subsidies are not tenable. But I want to get a clear explanation on this. Nigeria has just scrapped some of the subsidies on fuel, which has led to has sparked protests there. But those subsidies were there for decades. How are they able to manage that and ensure that the economy does not collapse?
So the case of, for instance, Nigeria is a very unique situation. They have been wholly reliant, or to a large extent, they've been reliant on the revenue from petroleum products. It's only in the past 2-3 years, since COVID, that you've seen a lot of taxes being introduced in Nigeria. So what Nigeria, I think, has come to the realization is that it's not sustainable to just fund your budget out of petroleum products, and they've also realized that the subsidies that they were giving were quite expensive. At least from a private front, we know, the largest investor there is putting up a refinery. So probably, I want to imagine the government of Nigeria is looking at that refinery, probably reducing the cost of the final products, even as they draw out or they withdraw the subsidies. So it's not a case of comparing Kenya and Nigeria. We may not have very similar structures because of the fact that they have resources such as oil compared to Kenya, which is more of a diversified economy as opposed to reliance on one sector. And I guess it was a matter of time before Nigeria, they had to do that. Otherwise, they are trying to also spur the economy, which has not probably been doing very well as well.
And away from subsidies, many governments always go for the sin tax when they are cash crunched. And it's no different here in Kenya. We're expecting that commodities like alcohol, the price is definitely going to shoot because of a number of factors, including some that will be mentioned in the budget. And looking at our current economy, I remember, I think it was during Uhuru's regime, when some of the alcohol, like the keg brands, were not subjected to sin tax, so that we may not revert to maybe the second generation drinks. But that is going to happen, and the government has put a spirited campaigns to fight this alcohol menace, but it's going for the businesses that were worst hit during COVID. A lot of entertainment joints did close up. How can we bridge that?
So for the first time, I think in many years, the bill as framed has not proposed an increase in alcoholic beverage prices.
But I'm saying this because of the fuel.
Yes. And that will go up. So what we are hoping is that this year, because I know, you might find a few pronouncements by the Cabinet Secretary that they will maintain the status quo, because we've seen a lot of alcoholic beverage companies suffering. If you are doing your genuine business, you are selling your genuine alcoholic beverages, then they've been hit hard because the price has gone up beyond the common citizens. So if you go to the rural areas, they are taking the very cheap liquor, which is, most of it is counterfeit. So we are hoping in this year the government maintains the same status as per the bill by not introducing an excise levy on those goods.
All right, we are having a special edition and coverage unmatched actually of the budget today, and I'm informed by my director that the CES is actually exiting his office right now, and I'm quite sure journalists are struggling to get a picture or two, as it is the norm with the famous briefcase. Let's first of all take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Are you a holder of unclaimed financial assets? Surrender unclaimed financial assets today and avoid the last-minute rush. Take advantage of penalties and fines waiver ending June 30th, 2023. Do not wait for the June 30th, 2023 deadline. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia, na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB.
In fact, there is a guy who is called Gikonyo. That guy, even his face, he looks like a thief. Unajua hata huwezi wanachika. Mwalimu and the rest. If that fellow called Gikonyo steps foot in this school again, ever, please ensure that let me know, okay? Nanjui?
TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Welcome back to 2023-2024 Budget Day. It is indeed the maiden President William Ruto's budget, and as you can see on your screen, we are at Harambee Avenue, just outside the National Treasury, where we are expecting actually the good professor is just being expected any moment now. Yes, indeed. A battery of journalists there waiting for him. What we expect is that he's going to be having some photo shoot out just outside. He is the man of the moment, Professor Njuguna Ndungu, who is the Treasury CS. Actually, it's actually the first budget he is also reading as CS. And as we always do, is having a photo session there with the famous briefcase before he makes his way to the National Assembly, where we are having all members seated, including the senators themselves. Njuguna Ndungu with what Kenyans are expecting today. 3.6 trillion budget, which is Kenya's biggest, just coming against a backdrop of recession, high economic turmoil, and also post-COVID. The first budget under the Ruto regime. But the biggest, or the lion's share, is being diverted to the education sector, where 604 billion shillings are going to be channeled to all the education sectors in the country, be it TVETs, be it high school, or even junior secondary and primary school. Okay, the photo session is just about to be concluded. Professor Njuguna Ndungu is a seasoned man, because he's a seasoned economist, being at the helm of Treasury for a couple of years, actually a number of years before he was elevated to head the Treasury there. Yes, holding the briefcase as we have always done each and every budget year. After that, he is expected in the famous the Passat, where he will be chauffeured to the National Assembly, where members are keenly waiting. At about in the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes there, we are expecting him to be telling Kenyans what we expect in a 3.6 billion budget. Remember, the finance bill has already passed the second reading, where we're expecting the third reading and the vote to be taking place on Tuesday, where we will know where the 311 billion shillings will come from. But the budget estimates will be read any moment from about 2:30 by that man there, flanked there by his PSs, and we're expecting one big budget, 3.6, with again education being one of the key beneficiaries of the budget that we will be having for the year 2023-2024.
Ngoja gari, ngoja kidogo afande. Afande gari kidogo. Ngoja. Ngoja kidogo. Slowly.
All right, there I can hear some of the journalists telling the professor where they want him, so that they may take the famous photos of the briefcase together with the CS himself. Remember the 3.679 trillion. And on the revenue side, we're expecting 2.57 trillion is ordinary revenue, and 3.347 42 billion in grants, and the deficit of about 720, which is 4.4 of the gross domestic product of the country, deficit down from the 6.2% for the financial year 2022-2023. Well, he has gotten into the Passat, and he's being flanked there by security officers, and he's making his way to the National Parliament. And just to mention some of the things that we are also looking on in this budget is that expenditure of about 2.3 trillion in the national government expenditure, including Parliament and Judiciary. The CFS actually being awarded 986 billion, equitable share of counties being at about 385 billion. Remember, counties were requesting for 400 billion, I think 405 billion, but the Senate approved 385 billion shillings. 630 billion of the national government expenditure has been allocated to education, as I had alluded to earlier. 25 billion being allocated for the junior secondary school. Actually, the junior secondary school are having a share of the first budget in regards to what is going to be read today. And 141 has been allocated to health. We've seen the Kiambu County government allocating the lion's share of its budget to the health sector. Just in case you joined us, this is unmatched coverage, a 360-degree coverage of the day's budget today. As we know, is that the professor is already en route to Parliament buildings, where members are already seated and waiting for the budget estimates to be read by Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. And I have been also having Robert Maina, who is a tax manager at the Ernest and Young, trying to put things into perspective on how we expect the professor to be pointing at in regards to how we are going to spend our money. 3.6 trillion being the biggest budget in the region. Kenya has always had the biggest budget in the East African region, and today is no exception. We're having 3.6 billion shillings that will be guided to. Let me get back to you, Baramaina.
Yeah.
And also, I remember President Uhuru Kenyatta did allude to the fact that in that briefcase that we are having the 3.6 trillion, a third of that is wastage or goes to corruption. And we have tried in as much, we have many agencies who are looking into the corruption issue, including the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But a third of a country's budget being either wasted, going to wastage, or even going to the pockets of Kenyans. That's a big dent into our economy as well.
And I think when you look at our constitution, institutional reforms and ensuring that we have strong institutions is one of the key agendas or key areas that the constitution expects the country to have. We know the current government has indicated that they have funded the judiciary very well. That's what they have indicated. So, you know, when you ask the politicians, obviously the executive, they will tell you, you know, we have funded the relevant bodies, the ODPP, they have the resources. With the EACC, they have the resources. And so it is now upon these bodies to ensure that, because we have very many cases, I think it's also good, we've seen a lot of cases being initiated. So as much as there's a bit of corruption, I think there's also a bit of, I can say that we've seen some work being done. What we've not seen is some of these institutions completing, or some of these cases not going to full hearing and determination. So if we are able to plug in that last step of ensuring that if we have a case that has been investigated, there is watertight evidence that goes to the courts and ensures that the person who is responsible is held to account. That would be a good way forward, because at the moment I think we have institutions, they have the resources. It's about ensuring that the final leg of these cases actually sees the light of day.
And President William Ruto is quite staunch in regards to the national debt. And that is why he's talking about we really need to find alternative sources of how we are going to fund our budget, but we do not want to borrow. And he even, in one of the events, he talked about the international bodies are saying that, yeah, we are ready. We are ready with the cash anytime you want the money, but he said we are not going to borrow. And we even know the United States, having one of the largest economies in the world, it has also debts, but those debts are not eating into the budget, into their revenue, or even collapsing some of the sectors. How do we, in as much as we have the debt, how do we balance that?
Most certainly we have to borrow. We cannot get out of debt. It's not possible. No country in the world, it's almost impossible to survive without debt. I think the question is how much can we borrow, or how much should we borrow, and how much should we get from the domestic resources that we have. And I think the biggest fear this government has is continuing the same trajectory that the previous government had. How much should we borrow? Because at some point, if you compare, for instance, our economy and the US, we are very different levels. We are an economy where we are still developing, and we have very many needs. Our infrastructure is still not at the level that we would want, as much as the previous government has done a lot in terms of the roads and all that. So economies such as the US, they do borrow a lot, but I think they have some controls that we don't have. For instance, their main currency is the US dollar. They are not affected at all by the movement in the currency value. In Kenya, you've seen just the depreciation of the Kenyan currency, what that has done to the foreign debt. As soon as the currency depreciates, your foreign debt goes up. Yet you've not borrowed an extra coin. So there are some differences between some of these economies, but we still have to borrow. The quantum is the main question.
All right. I am informed that we need to cross over to Parliament to just get a feel of, as you can see, the professor is on his way to Parliament buildings. Let's first of all cross over there to know exactly what is happening.
Of the budget highlights by the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning to make public pronouncements of the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the fiscal year 2023. And just to remind you that this is a live broadcast that is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. On this day is that pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 25A and 244C, the Speaker will not later than 3 p.m. invite the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning to make a public pronouncement of the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the fiscal year 2023-2024. And just to inform you is that the Cabinet Secretary is already within the precincts of the Parliament. He was received by the majority party, the Chairperson of Budget Appropriations Committee, the Chairperson Finance and National Planning, and the Clerk of the National Assembly. And he will be escorted to the public servant bench. And at 2:30, once the House commences its normal sitting, at 2:45, we expect the Speaker to invite the Cabinet Secretary to deliver the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the financial year 2023. What you are seeing now is that members are slowly walking into the chambers. This is the National Assembly sitting. It is a normal sitting of the National Assembly, so it is not a joint sitting, just in case you thought so. So these are just members of the National Assembly who will be in these chambers as the CS for National Treasury and Economic Planning will be presenting or making public pronouncements of the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the financial year 2023-2024. Remember, the budget was already approved for each ministry by the Parliament, and this afternoon what the CS will be doing will be presenting how to finance the budget. And a look at what the budget for the next financial year is. The budget has been set at 3.679 trillion. The budget has been set at 3.679 trillion. And on the revenue bit is that 2.57 trillion is ordinary revenue, and 347 billion is appropriation in aid, 42 billion is in grants. And just to check at what the 2022-2023 financial year had in store for Kenyans is that unlike this year's budget next financial year's budget at 3.679 trillion, this financial year, that is 2022-2023 budget, was at 3.34 trillion. On the grants bit, the 2023-2024 financial year has 42 billion in grants, while in the 2022-2023 financial year, there was or grants was expected at 33.3 billion. Those are some of the key areas, or rather the differences in the two budget highlights for the two financial years. And the deficit for the next financial year is that there's a deficit of 720 billion. That is down. The 720 billion is at 4.4% of the GDP, and it is down from 6.2% for the financial year 2022-2023. If you are just joining us, is that these are preparations for the presentation of the national government budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the fiscal year 2023-2024. And just to remind you is that this is the inaugural budget, or if you like, the first budget for the Kenya Kwanza government, as well as the first budget for President William Ruto. So just to look at some of what is entailed in the budget is that the expenditure is 2.3 trillion Kenya shillings in the national government expenditure, this including parliament and judiciary. We also have equitable share of counties that is 385 billion Kenya shillings. Remember, this is an addition of 15 billion Kenya shillings in this year's financial year. The county government were allocated 370 billion Kenya shillings. So those are some of the highlights that this budget has. But looking at the key priority areas that this government is seeking to channel its funds to, we have the agricultural transformation. We also have the MSMEs. There is also the housing sector, also healthcare, as well as digital superhighway and creative industry. These are some of the five key pillars or priorities that some of the allocations will be channeled to improve various sectors or various issues that are meant to improve the life of the local mwananchi. The 630 billion, that is around 27.4% is of national government expenditure, has been allocated to education. This, like I told you, remember the budget was already approved by the parliament for each ministry. So we have 630 billion that has been dedicated to improving the country's education system. This is on the sector allocations. We also have the Teachers Service Commission, that is TSC, in the education sector, is that has been allocated 323.8 billion. This is to support teachers' salaries and related expenses. The health sector, which is one of the key pillars or priority areas for this government, is that it has been allocated 141 billion Kenya shillings. And this is to enhance healthcare services across the country. The judiciary, which is part of the national government expenditure, that falls within the 2.3 trillion in the national government expenditure, is that it has been allocated 22 billion to support the administration of justice. In the manufacturing, which has been also a key pillar, or which has also been one of the targets in channeling funds or monies to in improving the economy, is that 3 billion has been dedicated to export or processing zones. This commonly referred to as EPZs, and this is to enable, promote industrial growth and export-oriented industries. These are some of the sector allocations in the 3.679 budget for the financial year 2023-2024. If you are just joining us, is that members of the National Assembly are getting into the chambers in preparation to give way for the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning to be able to make public pronouncements for the national government for the fiscal year 2023-2024. A look at some new issues that have come up in this budget. We have seen the introduction of new taxations. There is the 1.5 housing tax. There is also the 16% VAT on the petroleum products. This is how the government plans to finance its budget. Some of the new taxations that have been brought in. And just to remind you is that the finance bill contained some of these things. The bill that was passed in the Wednesday afternoon National Assembly proceedings. And there is also the digital content creators whose taxation had been put at around 15% but has been reduced to 5%. Some of the issues that are in the budget, or rather how the budget will be financed. At around 2:45 is when we are expecting that the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Dr. Moses Wetangula, will be inviting the Cabinet Secretary to deliver the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for the financial year 2023-2024. And members are still getting into the chambers, each of them taking up